Throughout our years, Ford has supported our nation's armed forces and honored their selfless service to our country. The Central Ohio Ford dealers are proud to continue this tradition by investing in the work of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus. Together, we want to share the veterans' heroic stories and introduce a grateful nation to the faces behind our forces. Please join us to hear inspiring educational stories from our veterans who have gone above and beyond their call to defend freedom around the world. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum and your Central Ohio Ford dealers. Together, we will never forget.
I have the deepest appreciation for all who have served or are currently serving our great country. And I'm incredibly proud of the work being done by the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Although NVMM is based in Columbus, its reach is national, telling the history and stories of veterans from all branches of service across America. It's a place of inspiration, remembrance, and learning. It offers a unique experience you can't find anywhere else. Most importantly, it gives a voice to every man and woman who answered the call of service to our country. Coming here helps me and my family better understand and honor the journeys and sacrifices of America's veterans. One of the many things I appreciate is that the museum and memorial helps further the appreciation we have for our veterans, no matter our age. I encourage you to join me by investing in the museum's important mission as a corporate philanthropic partner and personally as a member. Together, we can celebrate and preserve the legacies of our American heroes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our National Vietnam War Veterans Day Welcome Home Ceremony. Our Master of Ceremonies today is a Fox News co-host of Outnumbered and the New York Times #1 best-selling author of Under His Wings. She has been a champion for the military throughout her career and was selected by the USO to visit U.S. troops stationed in Iraq and Kuwait. Please welcome Emily Compagno.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And distinguished guests, veterans from all eras, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to be with you today. On behalf of the museum staff and board of directors, welcome to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Many Vietnam War veterans did not enjoy a memorable homecoming after their service. This is our opportunity to change that. Please direct your attention to the center aisle and let's welcome home our Vietnam War veterans. Now please stand if you are able for the posting of the colors by the Fort Hays Arts and Academic High School's United States Air Force JROTC, and remain standing for our national anthem by the United States Air Force Band of Flight.
Colors, hold. Present, colors. Every other, Harge.
Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause for these Vietnam War veterans. Thank you, gentlemen. And you may now be seated. We have that in common.
My wife thinks great on phones.
Oh, thank you. Is she here? Oh, nice. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. And now, please welcome Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Whiteman of the 121st Air Refueling Wing of the Ohio Air National Guard for our invocation.
As we prepare to pray, I'd ask you to consider this quote. No event in American history is more misunderstood than the Vietnam War. It was misreported then, and is misremembered now. Join me as we pray. Father in heaven, we invite you to be with us today, knowing full well that you're already here. And we ask that you would be with us as we actively welcome home the women and men who served our United States in Vietnam. We gather today to honor, not to honor war, rather we honor women and men who served selflessly and faithfully. While their war was so badly misunderstood, misreported, and misrepresented, we ask today that because of our time here, these, our heroes, will have an opportunity to be understood as we listen attentively. That they will have an opportunity to give in their report as we listen to what they share. And that they will leave this place knowing that they are remembered as a great generation which responded with patriotism, willingness to serve, and a desire to do what's right. God, it is our prayer that you are honored by all that we do and say here today. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Well, as I mentioned earlier, as I began, it is my honor to be here with you today. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my history and relationship with the National Veterans Memorial and Museum because it goes beyond just today. First of all, and most importantly, this book would not have occurred, would not have been made possible without the influence and my relationships with the incredible veterans and the incredible institution of the NVMM. Colonel Tom Moe, Sergeant Major Daryl Endfinger, Chaplain Major Jeff Struker, Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Randall, Captain Charlie Plum, Corporal Howard Spurlock, and Master Sergeant Robert Burr are all profiled in this book and have become friends and loved ones thanks to the NVMM. And the rest of you, as you know, or the rest of those in here, as you know, are my friends and family members. The NVMM profiled the 20-year war, an incredible book as well that included some of my friends and family members, a very moving exhibit years ago. I've been here for a 9/11 memorial ceremony as well. And what always stuns me, what never fails to impress and inspire me about the NVMM is the strength of the fellowship, a theme that has been underscored multiple times in my book, Under His Wings. Colonel Tom Moe, where are you? I want to be looking at, there you are. Colonel Tom Moe and Sergeant Daryl Enfinger, you two have become dear friends of mine. You are incredible inspirations, and your stories have influenced and impacted truly millions, and it was my honor to serve as a very small messenger for your stories and your voices, and your deeply intimate experiences with God and combat serving in Vietnam. You are national treasures. Thank you. Something that I have had the honor of always knowing, but has been reinforced as well through my journey of this book and through my relationship with NVMM, is that every single one of you are all treasures. You are all national treasures. Your stories are vital and unique. They carry so much weight, and they influence and inspire many. The fellowship with which you continue to hold dear, the stories that you carry are so vital, and we appreciate and see you. And it is my deepest honor and my most, I think, fundamental identity of what I do for a living is that I serve as a small messenger for those stories. Those of you Vietnam War veterans who may not have had that welcome home that you so deserved, you have it today, you have it now, you have it in me, and I speak unequivocally telling you that I represent millions who feel the same way. We are filled with gratitude for your service, gratitude for your honor. We pray for you every day, and we thank you for the honorable men and women of character that you are. And finally, thank you to this incredible institution for serving as so much more than a building, but truly a hall of memories, a moving, living organism that so many veterans and their family members, patriots and supporters can continue to come, honor, worship, have faith, and see each other, value each other, and continue the legacy, the extraordinary legacy of honorable service that you all carry. Thank you. Now, today's ceremony is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, Central Ohio Ford Dealers, Honda, and Lane Aviation, and ongoing support throughout the year from the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Nationwide, the American Electric Power Foundation, Cardinal Health, and the Wolf Foundation. It's important to remember that even though this place of honor carries the designation as the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, it is indeed a nonprofit organization and relies on financial support from members, donors, and friends who believe in this mission. I would now like to welcome to the stage the interim CEO of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, Dr. Frederick Bertley.
Good morning, everyone. The mission and vision of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum is to honor all veterans, elevate their stories, and amplify the power of service everywhere for everyone. And this great institution is the only institution in this nation that elevates and recognizes all veterans, regardless of branch, regardless of how you serve this great nation, and in what capacity. And so we're honored here to have you today to celebrate this very important recognition of the amazing men and women that served in Vietnam. Now, my father served his country as a lieutenant in the Navy, and through that, I have learned the power of service, which is why I'm honored to be in this position here. Now, when you think about the greatest country in the world, America, we are not perfect, but no nation is perfect. What distinguishes us is we arc towards perfection. And today, you couldn't fathom not supporting the troops. Today, you couldn't imagine a situation where our beloved troops are coming back into this country as veterans, and we are not embracing them with warm hearts, celebrating them, loving them as was shared. We know that implicitly, we exercise that explicitly. But there was a time where that was not so perfect. And we all know that story. You're going to hear more about it today. But the beauty of America, as we arc towards perfection, we understand what Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And we know that we had to make a day for this great nation 8 years ago that recognizes the Vietnam War veterans and what they did for this country. At the National Veterans Memorial Museum, we chose to call this a welcome home ceremony. Why? Because those of you who traveled, whether you travel for military service, whether you travel for business, whether you travel on vacation, you know coming home is a great thing, and you want to be welcomed home. Whether it's scary, sometimes it's filled with fright, you know when you come home, it's going to be all right. And so we know that welcoming in this great institution, the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, and this great country. Welcoming you all who stood up here back home. You are welcome home in this building. You are welcome home in the great state of Ohio, and you are welcome home in the great country of these United States of America. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you've done. Now, speaking of service, we talk about elevating veteran stories. Well, it's my distinguished pleasure to introduce our next speaker, a West Point graduate, a 27-year-plus veteran in the U.S. Army, not one, not two, but 3 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, the interim president of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, Colonel William Butler.
Well, good morning, everybody. First, I'd like to recognize and thank all of our elected officials who've joined us here today. U.S. Representative Mike Carey in his office, the Honorable Michael Ciccone, Councilmember Day Ackauer from Columbus City Council, and any of the other elected officials who may have snuck in on us. Thank you for joining us. And I've also got to acknowledge my dear friend of 30 years and one of our board members, Colonel retired Lou Ziesman, who's joined us with his father, Paul Ziesman, also a veteran of many decades of service to our country as well. Thank you for joining us. So having spent some time in some kind of nasty places in Iraq and Afghanistan, I was able to join some USO tours, and there's a lot of combat veterans and veterans from overseas deployments, and I would venture to guess that most of you were able to see Bob Hope or Playboy Bunnies or comedians, maybe Robin Williams, whether in Vietnam or in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or Afghanistan. And I've just got a tremendous amount of respect for men and women who don't have an obligation to serve their country, who go overseas, put themselves in danger, put themselves in harm's way to entertain the troops, to bring a small part of America to not so nice places. So Emily, thank you for what you've done. Emily's a great champion of veterans and military members and has been for a very long time. And her book is just further example of that. And as a storytelling museum, we want to share the veteran experience, and through relationships like we have with Emily in her work, with her book, Under His Wings, she's been able to do that. She's been able to capture those stories and able to share those with America. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you for your work in sharing these stories. So my dad is a Vietnam War veteran. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. In fact, I was born midway through his first tour on February 21st. Of course, in Vietnam, I was born in New Jersey. In Vietnam, it was February 22nd. So still to this day, he thinks my birthday is February 22nd. But that's okay. And I think back in my growing up time, his influence on me, he would take me out to reserve drills with his Special Forces unit, and I'd get to run around in the woods and try and sneak up on Green Berets. And surprisingly, I was kind of successful at it. And I also had a middle school teacher, Gwen Bush. She was my favorite science teacher in middle school and then in high school. And she, too, had been influenced by Vietnam and was open about that. Her first husband was killed in action leading a rifle platoon in the United States Army. That inspired her to join the Army and become an Army nurse. And then I think back to my time in college as an Army ROTC cadet at Eastern Kentucky University. And all of my instructors there, my professor of military science, the senior enlisted advisors, Sergeant Major Norris Shake, also a 173rd veteran, and Master Sergeant Fred Johnson, Sergeant First Class Lemieux, they were all Vietnam veterans. And they set an incredible foundation for me as a young cadet. And then when I joined the Army and got commissioned, my initial chains of command were all Vietnam veterans. They also set that foundation of how to train, how to care for, how to lead young men in a training environment and then ultimately in a combat environment. And make no mistake, the victors of Desert Shield and Desert Storm were Vietnam veterans. So were it not for that foundation of service, that foundation of training, that foundation of high standards executed very well, we would not have won Desert Shield, Desert Storm, or the Iraq invasion. So the importance of Vietnam veterans to our society can't be overstated. And, you know, they looked back on their time and how they were treated by our country when they came home, and they said never again. And they became enormous advocates of veterans. So the VA benefits that we veterans, my era of service, enjoy, and certainly the welcome homes that I experienced and many of my brothers and sisters in arms experienced were because of the attitude of Vietnam veterans to never let that happen in our country again. So from the bottom of my heart, as a fellow veteran, thank you all for what you have done for all of us. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. You've come to hear her speak, not me, Dr. Kimberly Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell was a Vietnamese orphan. She was adopted by a United States U.S. Air Force family and raised in Wisconsin. She was inspired to join our military, and she attended the U.S. Naval Academy, was commissioned, graduated, and then served as a surface warfare officer and has incredible experiences around the globe representing the United States of America for 17 years. And then when she left service, she got involved in numerous veteran causes. In California, at the Veterans Village of San Diego, the Dixon Center for Military and Veteran Services, the Herschel Woody Williams Foundation, all do great, amazing work supporting our communities and supporting our veterans. And most recently, she served as the senior advisor to the Secretary of the VA for the United States of America. So please welcome Dr. Kimberly Mitchell.
Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see so many of you out in Columbus, Ohio. This is only, I think, the second time that I've been to Columbus, and it's truly a great time to be here on March 29th, a very, very important day for all of us here today. Thank you to Colonel Butler and his team at the National Veterans Museum, or Memorial and Museum, for inviting me to be here today. What a great Air Force band that we had, the JROTC, Color Guard, and Emily, thank you for being here to MC this amazing program to welcome home our Vietnam veterans. So as you can tell, I don't like standing behind a podium. I am 5'2", and podiums are not my friend. So hopefully you're okay with me standing more in the center of the stage so you can see me and I can see you, because I like to engage. So, as a true former officer at the Pentagon, I like PowerPoint presentations, so sit back, we've got a 3-hour PowerPoint for you to dazzle you and make this a memorable experience. So I like to start out with a quote by Leo Raston that I think kind of sets the stage for today. I cannot believe that the purpose of life is to be happy. I think the purpose of life is to be useful, to be responsible, to be honorable, to be compassionate. It is above all to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made a difference, that you have lived at all. I think for me, all of our Vietnam veterans and Vietnam-era veterans have made a difference, because you certainly have made a difference in my life. So I like to start out with a story about 6 service members that died and went to heaven. As you can see, there's a representative from each service. Now, what happens when you get different members of the service, various services, together? Now, I can tell you're already thinking that, yeah. We're all bickering and arguing about who the best service is, all right? So here we go. You got the 6 service members, each one from a different service, going up to the gates of heaven, bickering back and forth. You've got the Air Force yelling, aim high, look at the sky. You've got the Army saying whatever it is Army people say, to stay motivated. It's that word that nobody knows how to spell or pronounce correctly. You've got the Marines looking for the nearest chow line because they're always hungry, and they eat until they're sleepy, and then they sleep until they're hungry. You've got the Coast Guard looking for the nearest drug interdiction. You got Space Force, who's so brand new, they're still learning how to put on their uniform and learning how to march, all right? So they're just following everybody else. And then you've got the Navy, keeping everyone in line and on time, which is what the Navy does. They get up to the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's there, and he said, what are you all talking about? There's like, St. Peter, solve this riddle for us. Who is the best service? And he looked at them and he said, you all are a bunch of crazy people. He's like, this is way above my pay grade. He's like, I cannot answer this question. He's like, but I'll be right back. So he takes off, he comes back, and he has a note card in his hand, and he starts to read it. And he says, all of you have served your country with honor. All of you have served your communities, your families, and served for a cause greater than yourselves. Come in, rest. Sign God, United States Navy retired. That's a true story, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to take you on a little journey. In May of 1972, when the North Vietnamese were advancing into Quang Tri, the South Vietnamese Marine and his company were assigned to evacuate the village and then blow up the My Chang Bridge just south of the village. Right before they blew up the bridge, one last survivor stumbled across the bridge carrying a bundle, and in that bundle was a baby, wrapped up in a towel and placed in a hat. And this South Vietnamese Marine went up to this gentleman. He said, is this your child? He said, no. I found her lying alongside of the road trying to nurse on her dead mother. He said, but I can't take her any further. You need to save this child's life and take her to the orphanage in Da Nang. And so this South Vietnamese Marine did as all Marines do, commandeered the company Jeep to accomplish the mission. And he drove this child from Quang Tri down to Da Nang, where he presented this child to the nuns. And this nun said, is this your child? He said, no. He said, she is found. Well, does she have a name? No, she doesn't have a name. Well, you brought her, you name her. And this South Vietnamese Marine said, you know what? I'm going to give this child a name that shows that she wasn't abandoned. Her name is Ngoc Bic, meaning precious pearl. A few months later, a U.S. Airman went to the orphanage, as many service members did during that time, to spend time away from war, spend time with children, providing gifts, bringing supplies, bringing food, bringing clothes. And one day, when he brought over some supplies to the orphanage, they placed baby number 899, known as Ngoc Bic, into his arms. And he fell in love. And in September of 1972, I was fortunate enough to be adopted and brought to the United States to be raised as an American kid in America, loving America. But my dad decided that he was going to retire from the Air Force, and we moved up to where my mom was from, my adoptive mother, a place where everyone should spend their childhood, northern Wisconsin. Can you look at me? I was born in a warm tropical climate. Wisconsin is 30 degrees below zero 11 months out of the year. It's a little chilly. But I started growing up in a grade school, middle school, and high school where I was the only minority. And, you know, in 7th grade, there's something that happens between 6th grade and 7th grade where kids can become a little mean. I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden, they became a little mean. And there's something when I go around the country and I talk about the power of humiliation, about when people maybe make it a point that you don't look like them. Maybe this color of your skin is a different tone, or maybe you dress differently, or maybe you respond differently. Sometimes that's how our veterans feel when they come home. That power of humiliation, taking, you know, that service member that did 6 deployments and now coming home to his or her family and sitting in a class with a bunch of 18-year-olds in college, and those 18-year-olds laugh when that veteran jumps at the slam of a door or a flicker of a light. It's that power of humiliation that makes you feel like you don't fit in. But anyway, I was focused on one thing: service. I wanted to serve. My dad, being retired Air Force, I was very attracted to that military service member way of life. I love structure. I love routine. I love making square corners in my bed, which, by the way, made plebe summer at the Naval Academy very easy. But I decided I wanted to go to the United States Naval Academy. Unfortunately, I was accepted. But 2 weeks before I reported to the Naval Academy, my father, my hero, was struck by lightning and killed on our farm. And when I go around the country and I speak, I want people to know that I understand what can happen to a family when a tragic incident happens. That family structure and how fragile it can be when something like that happens. I understand mental health issues. I understand addiction issues. I understand what happens when someone is incarcerated as part of your family. But I understand, even more importantly, the power of a community and how that community can come together to support our veterans when they need it most and lift them back up, get them on their feet. The Naval Academy recognized that I needed a year to spend with my mom and my brother and the farm. So they allowed me to take the year off. Of course, that was after spending plebe summer at the Naval Academy. They allowed me to resign from the Naval Academy, go home for a year, get things back in order, and then they readmitted me with a class of 96, where I went through plebe summer again, twice. And then I ended up graduating with a class of 96, spent 17 years as a surface warfare officer, serving on ship and on land, spending my last 2 years at the Pentagon, working for Admiral Mike Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And in that capacity, I was a deputy for the Office of Warrior and Family Support, where I traveled to 329 communities, working with educators, employers, and healthcare providers, really taking a look at what true transition and reintegration is for our veterans, our military families, and our Gold Star families. It's got to be more than giving baseball tickets to a veteran, putting them on the big Megatron and saying, "Thank you for your service," and then walking away the next day. It's got to be about what is it that this family and this veteran needs to be successful. It might be that basis of education, where it's not just getting into school, but it's getting them to the point where they're graduating, getting that certificate of completion. Whether it's a degree, whether it's a certificate in truck driver school, maybe it's going to culinary arts school to become a chef. And it's getting those employers to understand what meaningful employment is, bringing our veterans and their spouses in, and recognizing our skills, values, and competencies, and what we can do to make organizations better. And then it's about the community, providing all the rest of those services that are needed for that family. It might be child daycare, might be legal services, might be arts and recreation, it might be athletics. There's a lot of veterans who like to go work out in the morning at 6 o'clock, where I like to go get a coffee and sit in the lounge. But it's that community coming together to provide that wraparound support that's so badly needed. So I look at, when I left the Navy in 2012 to co-found, as Colonel Butler mentioned, I co-founded Dixon Center to continue working with communities across the nation. What has changed since 2012? There's a lot of stuff that's changed since 2012. There's a lot of stuff that's changed since our Vietnam veterans first left the military. I think it was already mentioned, right? That culture where service was not appreciated, to the culture of today where we thank and we honor those who have served, and we do everything that we can to uplift them and ensure their stories are told and that they are happy and healthy with their families. But what has changed? For organizations that are doing the same thing as they did 15, 20, 25, 50 years ago, and they haven't changed with the environment, the dynamic environment that's changing, you're missing the boat. You need to change with the times. The needs of our veterans are changing. Everything is on cell phones now. If you can't provide information and resources to our veterans, meet them where they are, you are missing how to connect with our veterans on very important issues, to provide them with very important resources and services. So here's my why. Everyone's got a why. Everyone may have heard, or maybe if you haven't, I encourage you to, Simon Sinek's Power of Why TED Talk. In it, he talks about what is your why, right? People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And why you do things is so very important. For me, so here's some of the pictures of my why. You might recognize some of the veterans in the pictures, especially the ones with the red polo shirts, because they're all from Columbus. I met them from a Columbus honor flight and got a few photos with them. But the Vietnam veterans, you are my why. You are why I do everything that I do each and every single day. I'm going to tell you a story about Michael. I met Michael in San Diego. Now, in San Diego, every year, you've probably heard of stand-downs. There's over 350 stand-downs across the nation every year. But San Diego, Vietnam Veterans of America, or Veterans Village of America, or of San Diego, was the founders of stand-down. And every year, we would take over the upper ball field of the San Diego High School, create a tent city, where we would have from Friday morning to Sunday afternoon, roughly 800 to 1,000 Vietnam veterans, Gulf War veterans, post 9/11 veterans come in and stand down from being on the streets. They could access services, everything from clothing tents to showers, to meals, to employment services, to housing services, and everything like that. And there was this veteran there, and my staff told me about him. His name was Michael. And Michael had come to stand down for 17 years in a row. And every year, the staff would be like, Michael, come on. We have services for you. We can help you. He was 62 years old. And he's like, nope, I'm good. I come in, I get my bag of clothes, I get my haircut, I get my showers, I get food, I get a little massage, I get a guitar lesson. And then on Sunday, he's like, I'm out of here, and I'll see you next year. Well, in 2017 was my first year of being CEO of VVSD, and my staff asked him again, would you like to come in and get some services? We can help you. We can get you off the street. And Michael said, fine, I'll come in. So on Sunday, we recognized them by welcoming them in to VVSD. And I was there, and you can see me, I'm shaking his hand, and I said, Michael, I look forward to seeing you every day on our campus. And he's like, yeah, okay. He's like, but don't be surprised if one day I just get up and leave, because it just might not be for me. He said, I'm just doing this to get your staff off my back. Does that sound familiar? And I said, well, okay, but I'll see you anyway. From this picture, I went and turned to my staff. I said, get him to the campus. I said, you put him on Chow KP duty. Give him some responsibility. Give him a purpose. Give him some structure and routine. Every day at the chow hall, Michael would come up to me, stand at attention, and bark at me. He goes, I'm still here. And I'm like, well, Michael, I'm glad you're still here. He said, yeah, they've got me wiping down tables. They got me setting tables. They got me chopping up veggies for chow. He's like, but, and I thought I was going to leave. He said, but do you know what? You're so busy. He said, chances are, if I left, you'd have to drop everything, and you'd come out, and you'd find me, and you'd drag me back here kicking and screaming. So he said, I just decided to save you the time and just stay. And I'm like, well, thank you very much for that, Michael, because you're right, I am pretty busy. A few months later, Michael came up to me, and he said, I'm graduating in a couple weeks. I said, yeah, I know. I heard. He said, I bet you didn't think I could make it. And I said, Michael, I knew all along that you could make it. I said, I needed you to believe that you could make it. And that's what we need to do as a community, is ensure that all of our people, all of our veterans understand that they can make it too. So as you know, this is the end of the 50-year Vietnam War commemoration that started 13 years ago. And I know that Columbus has been very involved. I saw, as the Vietnam veterans were all lining up here, I saw many of you have the lapel pin that was presented to you during a recognition ceremony over the years. As a grateful nation thanks you for your service. And I was fortunate enough back in 2012, when I first got out of the Navy, I was able to be a speaker for the Vietnam War commemoration for the first 3 years, to go around and help promote and help speak and help thank our Vietnam veterans. And there is the proclamation that was signed in 2012, and I don't know how many of you have actually read the words of that proclamation that was signed when this commemoration first kicked off. But I'm going to read it to you today because I think they're very important words, especially today, about the service of those that fought and served so long ago. As we observe the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, we reflect with solemn reverence upon the valor of a generation that served with honor. We pay tribute to the more than 3 million servicemen and women who left their families to serve bravely a world away from everything they knew and everyone they loved. From Ia Drang to Khe Sanh and Hue to Saigon and countless villages in between, they pushed through jungles and rice paddies, heat and monsoon, fighting heroically to protect the ideals that we hold dear as Americans. Through the decade of combat over air, land, and sea, these proud Americans upheld the highest traditions of our armed forces. As a grateful nation, we honor the more than 58,000 patriots, their names etched in black granite, who sacrificed all they had and all they would ever know. We draw inspiration from the heroes who suffered unspeakably as prisoners of war, yet who returned home with their heads held high. We pledge to keep the faith with those who are wounded and still carry the scars of war, seen and unseen. With the more than 1,600 of our Patriot service members still among the missing, we pledge as a nation to do everything in our power to bring these patriots home. In the reflection of the wall, we see the military family members and veterans who carry a pain that may never fade. May they find peace in knowing their loved ones endure not only in medals and memories, but in the hearts of all Americans who are forever grateful for their service, valor, and sacrifice. Because it is our Vietnam veterans who ensure that our communities stay strong. You are the leadership of our communities. As I mentioned, the honor flight. There's an honor flight that I often participate in, and it's called the Old Glory Yellow Ribbon Honor Flight, and it's from Wisconsin. And every year they fly roughly 120 Vietnam veterans to Washington, D.C. And I'm always invited, and I meet them at DCA, and if you've all been part of the amazing experience of the honor flight, you know the excitement of the veterans as they get off the plane into D.C. and the emotion that's already starting to flow through them. And there's bands, and there's people, and there's flags, and everyone's cheering and clapping and hugging and shaking the hands of these veterans, men and women, as they disembark the plane. And then we all get on a bus and we start the 6-hour tour of Washington, D.C. The first thing we do is we went to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where many of them got to touch the names of those that they served with who never came home. And then we go to the Smithsonian to see the Vietnam War display, and then we go to Arlington National Cemetery to see the changing of the guard to a ceremony at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And everywhere there's people thanking our veterans for their service and welcoming them home. And over 6 hours, you get to meet these veterans and hear their stories. Stories of service, stories of sacrifice, stories of loss. And these veterans, we all get back to DCA, and they're like, oh, we're so sad that we're going to have to leave you. And I said, well, maybe I can talk the TSA agent into letting me come into the gate with you. And they're like, oh, can you do that? Yeah, I think so. So what do you know? I'm at the gate. And we're sitting there and we're talking, and the flight comes in, and they said, oh, we're going to have to leave. And I said, well, maybe there's a seat for me on the plane that I can ride back with you. Oh, why don't you go ask? And I'm like, okay, I'll go ask. Look at that, I got a seat. So we get on the plane, and if you've been on the plane, ever been on the plane, for those of you who are veterans who have experienced this, or guardians who escort our veterans, the emotions again start flowing out from all the things that they saw during that day. And the package of mail that often is distributed to them from the family members and friends and neighbors of how proud they are of your service. And 20 minutes before we land, the pilot calls me to the front of the plane. And I get up, and I walk up to the front, and I get on the emcee. And I share with them the story that I shared with you today about how their service allowed me to do what I do each and every single day. And because it's a charter flight and no one's going to tell me to sit down, I'm able to shake the hands of every veteran row by row and thank them for their service. And the first flight that I was on, about midway back, in the middle seat, of course, so I'm reaching over, this veteran grabs my hand and holds it, and I said, "Thank you for your service, sir. Welcome home." And he was looking down, and he suddenly looked up, and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, "You know, Kim, I didn't think this day could get any better." He said, "For the first time I went to Washington, D.C., I'd never been to Washington, D.C. He said, "I've never been to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I've never been to the Smithsonian. I never went to Arlington National Cemetery." And he said, everywhere we went, we had people thanking us for our service. He said, "We didn't have that when we came home." He said, "So I didn't think this day could get any better." He said, "But you just got up and shared with us your story." He said, "You know, Kim, I can go home now. I can go home to my wife and my family and tell them I did something good over there." He said, "But you have to make me a promise." And I said, "What's that, sir?" He said, "For as long as you live, everywhere you go, ensure people understand our veterans, their service, and what's needed when we come home." And I made that promise because to veterans, we do not make promises that we don't, won't, or can't keep. And now you all are part of that promise. Everywhere you go, ensure our veterans have the resources and services and get the care and benefits that they've earned, because that's what we do as Americans. So a couple years ago, the Library of Congress asked me to co-write a song. And this song, at first, was going to be a song about my life, but the singer-songwriter from Nashville asked me what drives me. Why is it that I do everything that I do? Well, you already heard the answer. It's because of you all, the men and women in this audience, the Vietnam veterans. That is why I do what I do. So together, Cindy Morgan and I co-wrote a song that I'm going to play for you in a second as a thank you to our Vietnam veterans.
They boarded a flight, oh glory, turning back time to 73. They buckled up, pretty soon they touched down. This place to most of us is hallowed ground. They went to see Lincoln, took pics on the mall, paid respects to the greatest generation of all. And they knelt at the wall and they took off their caps for their Vietnam brothers who never came back. 58,178, they tried to count them and read every name. The In Old Glory she landed, and they got up for the door. A crowd of 200,000 or more, oh, with tears and great cheers for these heroes of war. 58,178. I wish my father could be here today. You're etched in our memories, our flesh and our bone. Thank you for all that you gave. Forgive us that it comes so late. Welcome home, 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 welcome home.
For you all understand that we are veterans, we're not victims. We never want pity, but we want recognition of potential. And we never want a handout, but sometimes life can kick us in the shin, we can stumble, we may fall down. We just need a little help to pick us back up, get us on our feet, point us in the right direction, and get us headed in the right direction and moving forward. So the rest of the story, you know that South Vietnamese Marine? On March 29th of 2013, he and I were reunited in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he and his family now live as they immigrated to the United States as part of the resettlement program and gained their citizenship as Americans. And it was a moving experience to be reunited with him. And then in June of 22, I happened to be down in Albuquerque with then Secretary Dennis McDonough as we were doing some events with some veterans in the Navajo Nation. And we had a chance to meet with Bao Tran and his family. And they got to share with him our story. Because everyone has a story, and that's what's so amazing about NVMM. It's a place where veterans can come and share their stories. It's important that you all share your stories because there's lessons to be learned and things to be gotten out of. In closing, there is no greater honor than the wear to the cloth of our nation. There is no greater need than those veterans and military families as we return home. And there's no greater sacred obligation nor noble undertaking that we have as Americans than to ensure that our veterans get the care and benefits that they've earned and the recognition of service that they so rightly have earned. For together we are stronger, and together we will not fail. Thank you again for inviting me here today. God bless you, God bless America, God bless our men and women in uniform, God bless our veterans, and God bless our Gold Star families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you for your service and your continued service to the veterans community and to this country. And as a Navy brat, I will be sharing that joke with my dad, who will love it, by the way. We have another veteran with us today that I would like to invite to the stage. Congressman Mike Carey is an Ohio native who served as an officer in the Army National Guard and is an alum from The Ohio State University, current national champions. In the spirit of unity and sacrifice, this University of Washington Husky acknowledges that, and now represents the 15th Congressional District of Ohio. Please welcome Congressman Mike Carey. I'll get this out of your way.
Well, first off, I want to welcome you because this is the 15th Congressional District in the city of Columbus. But what a lot of people don't know, and that's why having this venue here is so important. If you look behind you, you see the city of Columbus. But the city of Columbus was actually created by a bunch of Revolutionary War veterans that settled here in Franklinton. And so now that we have this beautiful facility, and I think the NVMM really sits right on the river, but is truly emblematic of the stories that are told within these halls, but the beauty and looking at heaven's own blue really sets the stage for what all of you have done. I don't really know what to say except welcome. Welcome home. You know, I think the one thing that we as members of the Columbus community take pride in is you're sitting in it right here. As we commemorate these 50 years since Saigon fell, today we remember the brave souls who served in Vietnam, and we thank them for their service. I wish that many of you could have had that welcome home that you had this morning. But I will tell you, every time you come to Columbus, Ohio, you will have it right here. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Today's Welcome Home ceremony brings with it the theme of storytelling. And the reason that I can serve as a messenger for so many stories of my families is due to the painstaking efforts of my mother, who, as a genealogist, called herself the family historian. Every record, every detailed anecdote, the framed photographs, every history of our extensive family history of military service, it was known, it was talked about every day around our dinner table, hanging on the walls of my childhood home, reflected in photos of her visiting the fallen of my family in Suresnes, France, and others. And the reason I bring this up is because in this homage to storytelling and recognizing the import of it, I encourage you to share your stories with your loved ones. It is that enables us to carry on your legacy, as the doctor eloquently stated, to learn, to know what to do, to know how to carry forward your legacies of service and sacrifice and such honorable service in uniform. Sergeant Daryl Enfinger, I had the honor of listening to your story as you shared with me as he reflected on the details of his service as an infantryman in Vietnam, what those days looked like day in and day out, ultimately becoming unrecognizable to himself in the mirror, the joys of the USO and the distraction, the brotherhood, and the concept that every morning as the men would pass around a canteen, 1 cup of coffee, that evening not everyone would return home, which is why when he visits his daughter frequently in Washington, D.C., he goes to the Vietnam Wall and there shares a cup of coffee with every single member of those 558,000 men who were left behind. And that brings me to Colonel Tom Moe, whose extraordinary service in Vietnam included, while at the controls of the F-4 on his 85th combat mission for the United States, the Air Force's munitions were exploding their own jets. Having been grounded for a while the Air Force worked to determine the issue and fix, they were returned to combat, and Colonel Moe at the controls, 85th combat mission, the munitions exploded in his wingman's F-4. While they were flying far apart and at different altitudes to prevent both of them from exploding and crashing, the worst occurred, and he did. While in an inverted tailspin, he had the wherewithal to radio back to base to say the munitions problem still has not been fixed, saving the lives thereby of every Air Force pilot that was taxiing or still in the air that the Air Force grounded, and the subject of one of his 2 Silver Stars. He then evaded capture for 2 days, and in his final moments before getting captured, he destroyed his radio, which thus destroyed all opportunity for him to be rescued by the United States. And he was on the radio with a pilot, Colonel Robert Bob Wilkie, who was coming in to rescue Colonel Tom Moe, and was shot down while Colonel Moe was on the radio with him. The first question Colonel Tom Moe asked after being held in captivity for 5 years, 1 month, and 22 days as a POW, the first question he asked the United States was, what was the name of that pilot? And has since worked tirelessly to secure the remains of Colonel Bob Wilkie to bring them home. And so I encourage you as well to talk to your elected officials. Congressman Kerry, thank you for your efforts in this too, to bring home the remains of our fallen brothers and sisters in arms over in Vietnam who have yet to be brought home so they can be laid to rest with their family. The gentleman I mentioned in my book on my USO tour, whose letter I read to the troops, the father of one of my best friends, a Vietnam veteran, his letter I read every night in our nightly performance because it was so profound and such a detailed and emotional account of his time. There was never a dry eye in the house when I finished reading. We lost him just last month, and I just wanted to acknowledge him, Robert Bob Looney. As we move forward and we go home after this event, I thank you all for your participation today and for attending, for sharing your stories with your loved ones, with each other, for allowing me to serve as a messenger as such, and for advocating for every Vietnam veteran for their remains to come home. The U.S. Air Force Band of Flight will now play the Armed Forces Medley. As your branch song is played, we invite you to stand, if you are able, to be recognized. The mission of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum relies on the loyal support it receives from individuals and organizations across the country. Since the NVMM opened in 2018, nearly 11,000 people have become members. Please stand if you are an NVMM member so we can thank you for your support. Thank you so much for supporting this incredible resource for veterans, their families, and the community. If you would like to become a member or make a contribution to the NVMM, please visit the membership table at the far end of the Great Hall after the ceremony. I would now like to invite Chaplain Whiteman back up for the benediction.
Again, will you join me as we pray? Father in heaven, we thank you because you have indeed blessed us. You've made your presence known to us. You have kept us. You've shown your face to us. And now, Lord, we ask that you would bless us again with peace. A peace that we can experience, a peace that we can share, and a peace that we can spread. Amen.
Color guard, retire the colors.
Colors, hold. Post. Every other part.
Thank you. You may be seated. And as we come to a close today, please join me in a round of applause for the color guard from Fort Hays High School, the students from Gahanna Jefferson School District for their beautiful welcome signs, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Whiteman, the U.S. Air Force Band of Flight, Brainstorm Media for today's production and live stream, the NVMM staff and volunteers, Dr. Kimberly Mitchell, and every one of you veterans who are here. Welcome home. Thank you for your service. This now concludes our ceremony. We invite everyone, take your time, explore the museum, enjoy these hallowed grounds. Today's reduced admission is just $5, and veterans from all eras, as well as active duty and Gold Star family members, are always free, thanks to the generous support we receive from nationwide. Finally, to all of the Vietnam veterans here with us today and watching from afar, on behalf of all of us, again, welcome home.